You're clean, aren't you? Except for your tower. You're a tower junkie, Roland.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. If this is your first time listening, Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King with a special focus on his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series. We discuss the themes, characters, and mythology of the series in Palaver episodes, and review the books and comic series in Keth episodes. We also discuss non-Tower King novels, TV and film adaptations of King's work, and the latest news about all things that serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com and follow us on every level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and with me today, as usual, is Tiny.
Yellow.
Hi, Tiny. How's it going?
Good, man. Good.
Good. Very good. What are we going to be doing today on the podcast, Tiny?
We're going to be reviewing It Chapter 2.
Yes, the highly anticipated sequel or follow-up to It Chapter 1 from 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Very excited. We've got a lot of news and check-ins to go through real quick before we get into that. But basically, what we're going to do, like we said, if this is your first time listening, the way we break down reviews of movies is we do a non-spoiler review and then a spoiler review. The way we're going to kind of divvy up this one is we're going to do non-spoiler, then spoiler review, and then do a book spoiler review, I think. So if you're wary of that, if you haven't read the book and want to just hear our thoughts on the movie, or if you haven't seen the movie but you want to hear our non-spoiler thoughts, check out the show notes of the episode. You can also find that at towerjunkiespod.com/032. So before we get into our review, though, we do have some Stephen King news to go through. We actually have a ton of Stephen King news that Tiny, I think we may, if schedules permitting, we may need to reconvene like next week or something and do like a news roundup.
Okay.
But I do have a few news items to kind of run through if you want to do that.
Sure.
Okay, so first things first, In the Tall Grass, the adaptation of the novella from Stephen King and Joe Hill, it's coming out. It's going to be on Netflix, I think, October 4th. So just in a few weeks, and it's directed by Vincenzo Natali, who, not to brag, totally liked my tweet about it. So
nice.
Yes. So there was a trailer that came out today. I think I'm gonna go ahead and play a little clip from the trailer here, but I haven't seen the trailer and I'm going to avoid it, so maybe I won't put a clip here. I don't know. Have you seen the trailer, Tiny?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, there's a trailer out there, guys. I'll put a small clip here, I guess. I'll put the beginning of it here.
I'm lost in here.
Did you hear that?
Someone out there?
So that sounds like it'll be really good, even though I haven't seen it. But yeah, I'm super excited about that because of something in my check-ins. So I'm excited for that. Are you excited for it, Tiny?
A little bit.
Okay.
I thought the book was okay.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are you familiar, and I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, are you familiar with Vincenzo Natali's work?
No.
Okay. I know him primarily from his directing work on the TV show Hannibal. And like that has some very just vivid imagery in it that I'm like that's what makes me really excited for this particular adaptation.
Okay.
He also directed the movie Splice, and he had a segment in Paris Je t'aime.
Oh, okay.
Which I know that you're a fan of.
Uh-huh.
But he also directed Cube, which is a movie that I have not seen, but I've heard good things about.
Yeah.
So he's a talented director, and I'm super excited to see him adapt this particular King/Hill joint.
Well, that has me a little more excited for it then.
Nice. Second piece of news is that the Institute, which came out, the Institute was published like a week ago. It has already got rights lined up to be a limited series.
Nice.
It's going to be the David E. Kelly and Jack Bender, who Jack Bender has directed tons of TV.
Yeah,
and,
he's like a legend in TV.
Yeah, and most notably for me, I associate him with Lost. So
right.
yeah, and David E. Kelly and him, they are also kind of producers on the Mr. Mercedes adaptation. So there's a lot of like, I don't know if the Institute is going to be a limited series on like Audience Network or whatever Mr. Mercedes is, but it's safe to say that it's going to be the same kind of creative team.
Cool.
Next piece of news is that The Stand had some casting announcements and production has officially begun on it.
Yes.
Super excited for this.
Yeah.
Josh Boone, I believe Owen King is like in the writer's room, and he's one of the people writing it. Also Stephen King did write the last episode and like a brand new like kind of coda to the story. So that's crazy exciting. But the exciting piece of casting news, that I have is, two things. I know that there was more casting, but the things that stick out is that Owen Teague is going to be playing Harold Lautner, in the adaptation. Owen Teague was Patrick Hockstetter in It and spoiler alert, Chapter 2.
Okay.
He was also in Black Mirror, Bloodline. He's a very talented young up and coming actor, and like I tweeted this, and not to brag, but Owen T kind of liked the tweet also.
Ooh.
So follow us at towerjunkiespod.com. No, at towerjunkiespod on Twitter. But I was like, he's not remotely what I would picture for Harold, because Harold is kind of this. He's almost a caricature of like. Just like overweight, gross, kind of, skeevy kind of guy. But Owen Teague is obviously like, a thin dude.
Yeah.
But I think that I mean, he's a very talented actor, so I think he'll pull it off very well.
Nice.
Also, bigger announcement, Alexander Skarsgård is playing Randall Flagg,
Yes.
the walking dude, the Dark Man. So how do you feel about this casting?
I'm pretty excited for it. He wasn't necessarily who I had in mind, but I think he's really coming into his own as an actor. I never thought he was like bad, but I feel like when he was playing on True Blood and stuff, he was tended to be kind of over the top and stuff like that. But I think when he has good material, he's a pretty good actor. And he won, I believe, an Emmy / Golden Globe / both for Big Little Lies.
Oh yeah, he was in Big Little Lies.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen that.
Okay. He was absolutely phenomenal in that. So the character he played in Big Little Lies is very conniving and crazy, creepy,
Sure.
Pretty much evil. And so if he just kind of channels that, he will be a great Man in Black,
Yeah.
Randall Flagg, walking dude.
I'm so excited.
Plus, he's a big name.
Yeah, oh, totally.
Yeah.
I'm crazy excited. So, so Josh Boone is the person kind of, behind the scenes. He's the director and everything. I recommend checking him out on Instagram.
Okay.
Josh Boone Movies on Instagram. He posted, First Day Complete. It's just him standing in front of, what appears to be a cornfield.
Nice.
Or he's squatting in front of it. Something that's Mother Abigail's farm. But he also posted this, his announcement for, Alexander Skarsgård playing Randall Flagg was this picture on Instagram. That is just a bunch of denim jackets, presumably from the wardrobe.
Nice.
So that's super, super exciting. I'm so excited that this is happening. Like, I know that Josh Boone for years has talked about this, and he's been such a big fan of Stephen King, and he's just, I can't imagine what it's like to be Josh Boone. Like, and like he even got Stephen King to be a part of his 2012 rom-com Stuck in Love.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
He's the right man for the job.
he is. I can't wait to see. I really can't wait to see this. I am dreading the podcast content we will have to provide.
Yeah.
Because The Stand's a big book.
It is.
And there's a mini series there. I also remembered suddenly yesterday that it was there's also a bunch of comic books.
There are, and I have a bunch of them, and I've never read them.
Yep. Same here. Well, I have one of them, but like I'm thinking like, okay, we'll have to do the comic book series and everything too.
Yeah.
So we'll have our work cut out for us. But
the only thing that has me hesitant about the project is that it's on CBS All Access.
What makes
Isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
What makes you hesitant about that?
I just am notoriously not a fan of the platform.
Oh, yes, that's right. Okay.
And its network. And,
yeah. Well, it being they're allowed to do, like they have that freedom. Like they're not.
Yeah, I know. I know, but it's still just
like studio interference,
fruit of the poisonous tree.
Oh yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's an opinion of mine that could be changing a little bit. There's some new show that's coming out on Fox that's real edgy. Like Michael Sheen is a serial killer in prison and his son is a detective. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah. Is it just evil?
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I saw a preview for it and I was like, oh, man, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then at the end it says, new on Fox. And I was like,
yeah. Yeah.
And like my wife's like, ooh, that looks really good. And I'm like, great, we're going to fucking watch this thing now.
Right.
And it could be good. That's the thing. Like, I shouldn't be that way. But
right.
It's the snob in me. I can't get past it for whatever reason.
I think that with CBS All Access, I think it's safe to kind of divorce yourself from that.
Yeah.
Just because they're not confined to that kind of thing.
It's a different platform, really. Yeah.
But I do understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
if it were on CBS True, like on the show, like on the network, I'd be like, ooh.
Oh yeah, I would be terrified.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Nope. No, thank you.
Yeah.
So that's super exciting, and we'll maybe talk more about that when we do our news roundup episode soonish. Other pieces of news. First, this is just there's no news to it, but since we are a Dark Tower podcast, there have been, I wouldn't say there have been whispers about the Dark Tower TV show, because it's kind of been radio silence for the most part, but, showrunner for the project that, as far as I know, has only had a, pilot order from, Amazon Prime, adapting obviously the Dark Tower series, starting with Wizard and Glass and B Flashback and everything. They shot the pilot in the spring, and Glenn Mazzara, who is the showrunner of it, he tweeted something that caught a lot of people's ears. Or eyes, I guess. So let me try to find it here, because I have to go through a whole bunch of tweets here. I'm so sorry. So a couple weeks ago, Glenn Mazzara had tweeted, and like I said, there's no official news or anything, but as of right now, Amazon has ordered a pilot for the Dark Tower TV series that they shot in the spring, I believe. But Glenn Mazzara on September 4th or 3rd tweeted, just wrote a scene that Becca Noble, his writer's assistant, who on LinkedIn apparently lists her occupation as Dark Tower TV script coordinator. And her bio on Twitter is, "My brain is a haunted house, script witch for the Dark Tower TV." So anyway, Glenn Mazzara tweeted, "Just wrote a scene that Becca Noble describes as Downton Abbey plus David Lynch plus Stephen King plus Jumbo's Clown Room," which apparently Jumbo's Clown Room is like a kind of an LA specific reference of some kind.
Yeah, I didn't get that one.
Yeah, but I think it's safe to say that it means that he's writing scripts for the Dark Tower TV show.
Yeah.
And so even though, like, I would say, like, okay, well, there hasn't been an official green light from Amazon or anything for a season or anything, but what I would kind of hesitantly infer from that is that they have ordered more scripts at the least.
Yeah.
So, cause I doubt that he would be writing them on spec. I don't, maybe he could be, I don't know how it works, but yeah, I think that's pretty optimistic.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's all I got for that. But last piece of news is that Castle Rock, should I play the theme music?
Sure.
Castle Rock.
Oh,
I
not
don't
that.
know. No.
Oh, God.
I have it isolated, so when we review it, we're going to be doing that. Castle Rock. Castle Rock is in the house tonight, Tiny.
It's not, though.
Yeah, well, King, it's just King. I don't remember it. Anyway, Castle Rock Season 2 premieres October 23rd, 2019 on Hulu. Did you see, oh my God, did you see the trailer for this?
I did.
How do you feel about this, and how excited are you?
Very excited. I mean, the whole, I like how they're really focusing on the whole Annie Wilkes thing. Because I feel like Misery is almost a little obscure, at least for modern audiences.
I'll meet you halfway. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of like people who have Hulu, who are into Hulu, are younger millennials, you know, that may not even know what Misery is, and
because they don't have the life experience to know what misery really is.
God damn it.
Am I right?
Yeah, fucking snowflakes.
Yeah. You took it to a different place, but okay.
But that thrills me because I'm such a big fan of the book and the movie. So that was thrilling. But it was, other than that, it was a very chill trailer.
Yep. Kind of ambiguous.
Yeah, it showed a lot of the main characters, but there was no huge set pieces.
Yeah.
At least that I could see. There was no like.
There's a car accident, but I think that's just about it.
There was no like revealing dialogue or anything. Really. I mean, it was it was a good teaser.
I agree. A
true teaser.
Yes. One thing that really stuck out to me with the trailer, was the way that they made Lizzie Kaplan look like Kathy Bates. Like the way like her makeup is done, the way her hair is kind of straight and kind of unassuming, but also like there are shots in that trailer that just kind of like were jaw-dropping to me because it's filmed in a way that the lighting is hitting her face in a certain way that, and my assumption is that it's meant to emulate the work, the lighting effects and everything, and the cuts in Misery the movie, and it looks like she's Annie Wilkes, and it's like it's so like that has me so excited.
Nice.
So yeah. So that's October 23rd. We are going to be reviewing it on the podcast, and hopefully we don't die. So that's news. We'll do a proper news roundup eventually. But Tiny, before we get into our review even more, check-ins. Do you have any Stephen King check-ins for us this week?
Time. Checking in on The Institute.
Yes.
I'm about 5 hours into it.
Nice.
Made a little bit of progress today. I'll make more tomorrow. So yeah, I'm enjoying the crap out of it so far. It hooked me in pretty quick.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I finished it today.
Wow.
I really enjoyed it. There was a moment last night when I was listening to it before bed, and I was like, I've got like 4 hours left, and like I tweeted this, and I was just like, if it wasn't midnight, I would just power through, and I would just finish it now, because like it's so like the momentum is really good. I really like the kind of momentum he has with it.
Nice.
So that's one of my check-ins. I do have a few more that I'll just kind of breeze through since we're running a little long, but First of all, obviously finished the Institute today, so I'm excited about that. Also, before I even started the Institute, I listened to Firestarter for the first time. Firestarter's a book you haven't read?
Have not read.
Okay, have you seen the movie?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, I listened to the audiobook and I enjoyed it. I was very interested in listening to it and experiencing Firestarter because it was obviously one of the King books that was heavily influenced Stranger Things, especially season 1. And I could see quite a few of those influences and everything, but it's not like a blatant like rip off of Firestarter or anything. But it's a good story. I enjoyed it quite a bit. The relationship at the core of it between Charlie, the Firestarter, and her father, who, like, the book is they're on the run from the shop, which is basically, a secret organization that, I don't know, but I won't give anything more away. But it's really thrilling and really interesting. There's some classic King-isms that I don't know how I really felt about it, but I enjoyed it. So we'll eventually get to it down the road. But, for now, I just enjoyed it.
Nice.
And then, after finishing the Institute today, I listened to In the Tall Grass.
Okay.
Which we will probably review soon in the lead up to the movie. We may need to do like a 2-episode in a week thing for release. I don't know. But, well, maybe. I don't know. We'll talk about it. Okay. But, it's funny. I'm looking forward to talking to you about In the Tall Grass in a more, expanded conversation because I was really into it.
Really?
Yeah, I was really into it. And like by the end of it, I was just like kind of I wouldn't say gobsmacked, but I was just like, I was listening to it, and toward the end, like the big climactic moment of the story, I'm sitting at my desk doing my work, and I'm like, I have my jaw like agape. And one of my coworkers walks by, and I'm just like, I didn't even acknowledge if she saw me or anything, but I was just like, I had this dumbstruck expression on my face, like, whoa, did that really happen? And everything, I enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to talking to you more about it. Couple other quick things. I bought the Stand miniseries on digital. I talked about how I had pre-ordered the Blu-ray that's coming out, but I went ahead and canceled the pre-order because I found it on Vudu. It was fine.
Okay.
I also bought the Salem's Lot miniseries from '79, I think, with Rob Lowe. No, was he in the 2004? I don't know.
Salem's Lot miniseries?
Yeah.
That's with the dude from Dukes Hazzard.
Oh. Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know his name.
Interesting.
I've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Because I just, in my head, okay,
I think that's... I might be misremembering.
Oh, you might be right. Okay, yeah. David Soul plays Ben Mears. James Mason plays Straker. Who was he in? Anyways, the Tobe Hooper miniseries. But it's interesting because on Vudu, like both Salem's Lot and by the way, he was Starsky and Hutch.
Starsky and Hutch, yeah, might be what I'm thinking.
He was
of.
Hutch.
Yeah.
But this miniseries is on Vudu, like it's just a full movie version of it, which I'm kind of, and The Stand is the same way on there too, so that was kind of a letdown.
That's kind of annoying.
Yeah, but whatever.
Yeah.
So those are my check-ins those are my check-ins. Yeah, let's do that. So should we review this movie?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So those are the check-ins for the week, and hope you guys enjoyed them, and we are going to go into our review of It Chapter 2. So Tiny, I'm going to go ahead and read the plot summary, courtesy of IMDb.
Okay.
It Chapter 2, directed by Andy Muschietti. Defeated by members of the Losers Club, the evil clown Pennywise returns 27 years later to terrorize the town of Derry, Maine once again. Now adults, the childhood friends have long since gone their separate ways, but when people start disappearing, Mike Hanlon calls the others home for one final stand. Damaged by scars from the past, the united losers must conquer their deepest fears to destroy the shape-shifting Pennywise, now more powerful than ever. So Tiny, will you allow me to postpone the review just a little bit longer so we can talk about the Obsessive Viewer Facebook group screening event?
I'll allow it.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So we did our second time ever, I think.
I think second time.
Yeah. An Obsessive Viewer Facebook group screening, which you can go to Facebook.com/The Obsessive Viewer to go to the Facebook group and everything. Occasionally we post in there. But yeah, so we basically brought people together to see this movie.
We did.
I want to give a shout out to people were there, and that's always super nice and awesome. Longtime listener Andy was there, Matt and Draco. Also, Paige, no relation,
Right.
was there. Which okay, I had this joke in my head, this stupid joke in my head that so one of our listeners, Paige, was there, as well as your wife, Paige. Two separate people, obviously. So, like, my joke was, like, in my head, and I almost messaged you with this, but let me make sure I get this right. Like, I imagined myself saying, like, what is this? An email that I send to Tiny in the middle of the night with way too much detail about something insignificant for the podcast because it's 2 pages.
Oh my god. Yeah.
I'm so glad that I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. So how did you feel about the Facebook group screening?
It was great. We had a lot of people there.
We did.
I mean, more than a few. So, I mean, I think me, you, both the Pages, Man and Draco, Andy, and then our friends Donnie and David were there.
Yep.
It's 8 people.
Yeah. Also, I don't want to lessen the importance. I don't want to rank the listeners of the podcast or anything like that. But and I don't remember their name, but I'll just everyone will know who it was. Newborn baby was there. Our most important listener.
Yeah.
So there was a baby at the screening.
Yes.
Like someone brought their baby, but okay. I get, like, first of all, the baby was fine.
Right.
Like, at the beginning, it was crying a little bit because it was being scarred for life. But, and like, it's a Sunday matinee, so, I mean, I guess I can understand that, but like, if you have a baby, why bring it to a 3-hour, like, rated R horror movie that's gonna have loud noises and flashing colors and stuff?
Right. Strange choice.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
But the baby was very well behaved, and I look forward to their listenership when they discover podcasts.
Yeah, my Paige, my wife, thought it was. She heard the baby like making noises. It wasn't really loud, but I didn't even hear it. But she was like, "Is that part of the movie? Like, are they trying to be just add creepy sounds to the movie, or did somebody bring a baby to this?" And like, she asked me, she's like, "Do you hear a baby?" And I was like, "No, I'm trying to watch a movie." And then later on, there was like a quiet moment in the movie, like while 2 characters were talking, and the baby like audibly cried. I was like, "Oh, I hear it now." And she was like, she like rolled her eyes.
And what was even more, the baby was texting. The baby got a call in the middle of the movie. Was screaming at the screen to like look behind you and stuff. It was really obnoxious.
Oh god.
But it was a lot of fun. It was really great.
Yeah.
Elephant in the room. I did send a text message to Robert Feckus, one of our recurring co-hosts on Obsessive Viewer, and he had to work that day, so he couldn't make it. And then Kirsten, one of our other recurring co-hosts, was all set to go, and then she was like, since I'm moving this weekend and I have homework and everything, like she's been under a lot of stress and everything. She's like, I hate to be that guy, but I'm like, it's fine. It's okay.
It's cool.
Yeah. But as I said to everyone in the event page afterwards, I really hope that everyone that went appreciated my live coughing every 3 minutes during a 3-hour movie commentary that I provided.
I didn't even notice.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's what kind of sucked for me, because Friday afternoon I got a sore throat, and then Saturday morning I had like a stuffy nose and headaches, and like I was like, okay, I have a full blown cold, and then like it was Sunday morning, I woke up with an excruciating headache, and I was like, oh, I need to, like, I was waiting, and I was like, when I woke up, I was like, I can't go. Like, I just can't do it because it's so bad. But like, I just held off as long as I could, and then like the headache kind of subsided, and I was like, I'm gonna go.
Dang. Was that your second or third time seeing it?
Second time seeing it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the Facebook group screening. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, so hopefully we can do more things like that. I did float the idea of doing a Dr. Sleep group screening.
Yeah,
so
that'd be
we
cool.
may do that. So let's stop with the preamble here, and let's go into our our non-spoiler thoughts on It Chapter 2. So Tiny, I've seen this movie 2 times now. You've seen it once.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of, my thoughts have kind of marinated a little bit and evolved a little bit in that second viewing, but I want to get go ahead and sing the song of your review of this non-spoiler It Chapter 2 movie.
Okay, I will review to my heart's content.
Yes.
Of course, I'm not surprised at all, but I really loved it.
Nice.
It's going to be in my top 10 for the year without question. I think as I was leaving, we were talking to our friends and stuff. I was like, hey, how did you like it? I mean, what do you think? And most people liked it, but like, Man and Drinka was like, he said it was okay, and stuff like that. And, I think some other people have had some issues with it. And I'd heard a few things in passing that there were some issues people had. And I was like, okay, I understand that. And I don't think people were wrong, about those. But as I thought about it more, I was like, I don't think we're ever going to get a better adaptation of it.
Oh, interesting.
Than these 2 movies.
Okay.
Like, I think that's pretty much as good as it's going to get. And I think they were, both films together were really well done. And I'm beyond satisfied with them, really happy with them. And so I think that's, like, I feel like people might have issues, but I think that, like, those issues would be difficult to correct.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
if they'd gone different way, or like they would have been truer to the book in this part, or whatever.
I'm totally picking up what you're putting down.
Really?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think with as complicated and rich as this story is, it's hard to wrap it up. It's really hard to end things. That was our running theme throughout the movie, is endings, which I thought was a fun feature of the story. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to wrap this up, and monster stories can be really tough, and a lot of the time they suck. And I don't think this one did. I think this one was great. I think it was way better than sucking. I think as far as like the conclusion to the ending that we got in the book, and like the ending from the miniseries and stuff like that, like it's, I think this is a really good version of the conclusion of the story, of it ending. So I really enjoyed it in all those aspects. I was so glad that there was it was so satisfying to see the blending of the adult versus the childhood thing, which is one of my favorite parts of the book. And obviously it's not there in the first movie,
right?
Because it can't be. But that was like a thing of beauty to me. I really enjoyed that.
Did that hit you with, like, did that catch you off guard or surprise you? Like, were you aware that there was going to be flashbacks throughout the movie?
I figured there would, but I wasn't sure. I thought, I was worried that the kids, like, as their childhood story would be pretty much an ending to an end already, and maybe they'd be a bit of an afterthought, something like that. I was really glad to see that wasn't the case. They were much more involved than that. I don't think that's a spoiler or anything.
No.
So the kids were present, and we got new new stories from when they were kids
Yeah.
that I thought were great. I was so happy to see that again, because that's probably my favorite thing about the book is how well Stephen King wrote those kids.
Yeah.
And I was more than happy to see more of their childhood. So that was one of the more satisfying parts of the movie. The casting was perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Bill Hader, I haven't seen him better in anything ever. I mean, he was just perfect for that role.
I agree.
Absolutely perfect. James McAvoy is one of my favorite actors, so I was glad to see him as Big Bill. And Jessica Chastain was great. Great casting. And then a lot of the other actors I wasn't too familiar with. I can't remember his name, but Eddie Kasprak. He's been in a lot of
James Ransom. Ransom.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of HBO productions.
Yeah.
That I've seen him in. He's always great. So
Ziggy and the Wire.
Right. So the cast was great. And it's basically a 3-hour movie. And man, I don't think it felt like it at all.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So plenty to love about it, and I really did.
And people have been people have kind of complained, and they're well within the right to complain about the runtime of the movie, but I always feel like that's kind of a, I don't know if I don't want to say easy criticism, but I feel like it's kind of a, not even like a cop out, but it just kind of feels like a, well, okay, this is a long movie, so it was too long. Like, okay, well, define too long. Like, is there something in the movie that could have been cut out that wouldn't have affected the story or anything? Anything? But I think that's just like, I don't like sitting in a theater for 3 hours, so that is why I don't like this movie that much.
Right.
But I will say, yeah. Do you have any more thoughts?
Well, to that idea, I don't feel like it needed editing or anything. Like, I feel like everything that was in the movie was necessary and was satisfying, or it served the story. But there were some parts where I think, it's like, oh, you got to go. The characters have to go do certain things, and I'm like, it's not like they were dragging the movie out. I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
But it was a little arduous, a little bit taxing.
That was a big complaint that I read.
Okay.
Yeah, that type of complaint, fair game.
Yeah.
But like just saying like, oh, it's a 3-hour movie, I don't want to sit through a 3-hour movie. It's like, okay, well, fine.
There are plenty of 3-hour movies I'd be more than happy to sit through.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Personally.
But. Well, so am I safe to go?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this was my second time seeing the movie, and I am likely going to see it a third time with Kirsten.
Okay.
So I have a very interesting relationship with this movie. The first time I saw it was a Thursday night, opening night and everything. I watched it. I sat there and watched it and everything, which is what you do in a movie theater. And it was so awesome because I was sitting there and like I had, like, weirdly enough, I had the whole row to myself. But like, if you were to like see me in that seat, like I had just the biggest like shit-eating grin, like stupid look on my face. Cause I'm like, they're going to have dinner, the fortune cookies. And like, I'm catching, I'm absorbed in the story because I know the things that are going to happen. And like, it was such a snobby book reader kind of reaction, but like, I was with it. I was so on board with it. And then in that first viewing, I loved the first half of the movie. Well, even the majority of the movie, I loved it. The way that it incorporates the flashbacks, I felt was a really, I don't want to say ingenious, but like it was a very clever way to both pay homage to the book and the narrative structure of the book, while also, bringing us bringing the fans of the first movie, up to speed with the things that they loved about the first movie. There was some de-aging CGI, apparently. Yeah. And some voice alteration, I think.
I could tell on the voices.
Yeah.
But the physical, I couldn't pick up on that at all.
I couldn't detect that at all.
Yeah.
What I did detect was, as much as I think he's a great actor and everything. Like, what was super surprising was how deep Jack Dylan Grazer's voice was as Eddie, as young Eddie. Like, I was just like, whoa, puberty. But anyway, so that first viewing, I left it satisfied. I can't go into specifics because of spoilers and even book spoilers. But what I'll say is that there are significant changes made from the book, as there are with any adaptation.
Yep.
And I even said in a previous episode that I was prepared because this section of the story, their adult story, is much more open to interpretation than any other portion of the book. So I was prepared for that. But there were moments there were issues that I had with the movie that afterwards I was like, okay, it didn't connect with me in certain ways. Like, there is without going into spoilers, but it's kind of common knowledge. Like, there is a change to Richie's character. There is an entire subplot added that I think Bill Hader did a phenomenal job with.
Mm-hmm.
B, I think was a really great character, turn and something, in terms of addition to the plot and everything. I think it fit beautiful. I was on board with that character arc.
Mm-hmm.
My issue was there is none of that in part one. If you go back and watch it, chapter 1, there's nothing seeding that at all. And, I had that disconnect, and it wasn't until later that I read, a film critic tweeted out saying that, keep in mind that, it chapter 1, when they made the first movie, they were using, they had Cary Fukunaga's discarded script from when he was working on it, for when he was deep in pre-production for it. They had that to work off of. And now chapter 2 is Andy Muschietti and his team and everything solely working on it. So, and that kind of stuck with me as I went through the week and a half or so before seeing it a second time, because there were moments in the movie that stood out to me as almost incongruous with the first movie, and little bits and pieces here and there. I won't go into spoilers or anything because this is just broad, but they stuck out to me, and I even had lengthy text conversations with Mike from Obsessive Viewer, and As Good as It Gets band, check it out. And he had questions oh, is this more clear in the book? And I was like, well, that's actually completely invented for the movie. And all that, and talking it out with him, I got to a point where I was like, I don't think I liked this nearly that much, as much as I did coming out of the theater. And so I was nervous going into this group screening, because I was like, am I gonna just not like it? I don't think it was ever going to get that deep, but I was first of all, I knew that it wasn't as good as the first one. The first one is amazing to me, and I didn't expect it to beat it or anything. But watching it that second time and being able to know where it's going. Obviously I knew ahead of time, where everything was going, what changes were made, what things were omitted and everything. I really enjoyed the second screening a lot.
Nice.
There was, it didn't feel 3 hours. It felt like it was a briskly paced thing. There is so much to this movie that, it's not even so much that I was picking up on things that I missed on the first screening. It was just I'm just enveloped in the story the second time around, and it's just things are clicking together in a way that while I was watching it the first time, I was like, well, wait, this correlates with this part in the book. And I don't know, but kind of the end of my broad non-spoiler talk is that I came away from this liking it more the second time, and I think it's a movie that's going to kind of grow on me. I do still have some concerns, some issues, some legitimate issues, and some very minor nitpicks to pick at it. But overall, I really liked it. I thought it was really well done, in a good good conclusion to the story that I will say, kind of. I have, even though I liked it and everything, I think the last half hour is the most problematic for me.
Okay.
And yeah, I can't wait to talk to you about it in more depth.
Okay.
So non-spoilers, I think, are done. I think. What did you think of the special effects and everything?
Oh, they were great. I think they were even kind of an improvement from the first one.
I agree.
Not that they needed to be,
right,
or anything. But just I feel like they really honed in on the second one.
Yeah,
you know?
And the first one is it has that feel of a small budget production.
Yeah,
and they clearly had more money this time around.
Yeah,
and you could really see it. Like, they really went all out. Like, there are certain scenes that I thought were phenomenal. So let's go ahead and go into spoilers for It Chapter 2. I'll go ahead and play a clip from the trailer here, so if you don't want to be spoiled, go ahead and shut down this podcast, go see it, and come back and listen to it.
To the losers.
We made an oath.
Swear? If it isn't dead, if it ever comes back, we'll come back to it.
We didn't stop it.
Pennywise.
The clown. We can't let it happen again.
Okay, spoilers on for It Chapter 2. So Tiny, should we go kind of chronologically through the story, or is there anything that you want to talk about first?
No, that's good.
Okay, so opening scene. Okay, yeah. So let's kind of break it down into different segments. So obviously the big thing that's getting a lot of attention online is the Adrian Mellon story. Mm-hmm. So in the book, Adrian Mellon is a homosexual man who is beaten to death and thrown into a canal, into the canal, and it was omitted from the miniseries, but was here for this. So, how did you feel about the depiction of it? Like, did you have any? How did you feel about Adrian Mellon in this movie?
I was a fan of it. Because I think it was just a good catalyst to bring, as far as serving the story, it's a good catalyst to bring all the characters back together. And that happens, in the end when, Mike Hanlon shows up and he's, he's curious. He's like, this sounds oddly suspicious, and, he was right in his suspicions. But I also think it worked well as a way to kick off the movie, to bring us all back into the world of Pennywise. And, it was pretty subtle, I feel like, as far as bringing Pennywise back in. But also just, the town of Derry has this air of negativity and frankly, like, evil in it. And it's something we talked about in our commentary. That the town is sort of been poisoned, or it's almost like an extension of Pennywise. And he's infected the town. He's infected the town. Yeah. And I feel like the wretched homophobia distributed or on display in that opening scene that we all, don't like to see anymore.
Right.
That's not controversial anymore.
We don't like to see anymore. We loved seeing it in the past.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
But no, like that's not acceptable anymore.
Yeah.
And, and we all most people have strong feelings about that. And so I think that was, it was a bold choice, but I think it was the right choice to make, cause I feel like those homophobic guys who perform this evil act are, not that to say that they're innocent or that they're just being influenced by Pennywise, but I feel like they're an extension of that, or they're in relation to that. And I thought I think it was a good part of the story in the book, and I feel like they captured it like pretty much perfectly for the movie.
I agree. First of all, I think, hang on one second. Fecus is game to record for Obsessive Viewer for a review of this tomorrow. If you want to record too, if you want.
I am working tomorrow.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah. Ugh, lame.
Yeah.
Gross. Ooh, yuckers. Okay. So this portion of the movie, the Adrian Millen portion, has gotten a lot of flack online and everything. I thought it was a very, like you said, it's a very bold inclusion, a bold choice to include it in the movie. And I think that because it's an interesting, I don't want to say disparity between the book and the movie, is that, the book, that happens in 1989, I think. And in the movie, it's obviously 2016 or 2017 in the movie. Mm-hmm. But, so it's like, I think that there's, like, the online community is like, well, okay, I don't know if they're saying that it wouldn't happen today, but it's like you said, it's more of, okay, it's just like the influence of Pennywise, on the town itself has created this evil within, like, just people. And it's, I don't know. First of all, I will say that it was brutal. Like,
yeah, it was
absolutely brutal. And I feel like you need that type of, or that amount of brutality to bring us back to, okay, Pennywise is freaking crazy. Mm-hmm. And I think it did demonstrate a good, it demonstrated that it was very clear in demonstrating that it was Pennywise's influence on the town, I think. But a lot of people are kind of, taking issue with it because they think, I don't know, I've seen some people claim that by having it in the movie, it's by itself is a homophobic thing to do, which I don't know. First of all, I need to research it more because obviously I'm a straight dude. I didn't grow up with, like, that experience or anything. So, like, I don't know what like the LGBTQ community, like, their perception of it. I can't claim to know what they think of it or how they feel about it. But I feel like just having it in there, I would say it's not like a homophobic thing to just have, like, a gay hate crime in a movie, because it's not like it's celebrating it or anything. It's demonstrating it as a completely heinous, evil act. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but I think that the way it was depicted was well done. The balloons were a nice touch.
Yeah, those were cool.
That's something that in the book it's described as, like, thousands of balloons, and I was like, I don't know how they can really show that, but, like, they showed it. Like, it was very vivid.
They nailed it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, following that same vein, mm-hmm. Richie mm-hmm. Tozier is gay in the movie.
Yep.
And that's I thought that's where the controversy would be. Because I think, it's when Richie is trying to find his token and stuff
mm-hmm.
like that, or his talisman, whatever, I don't know. He goes to the park and he sees Pennywise there, and he keeps saying, I know about your dirty little secret.
Yeah.
And, I thought people might be upset, like, well, why does it have to be a dirty little secret?
And
people might be upset that he never came out.
That's an interesting take on that.
I thought that's where the controversy would be.
Okay, no. Another, and it's, to go back to the Adrian Millen thing, another big issue that people have with it is that when King wrote that section of the book, he drew inspiration from a real life hate crime that was very similar in Bangor, Maine.
Okay.
Where I think a gay couple were accosted, and then one of them was beaten to death and thrown off of the canal into the water.
Okay.
In the book, okay, so the real life hate crime, the victim of that had asthma, and in the book he doesn't have asthma, but in the movie they gave him asthma.
Okay.
And I think that's another thing that people are kind of, like, upset about, saying that, like, well, that's a little much to depict this particular hate crime, even though it's not like a depiction of that actual crime. Like having it, I think that there's an argument to be made that it's in poor taste to have him have, asthma like the real life person that was killed. So I can understand that, but I think that it was a strong, disturbing way to bring us back into Derry, essentially.
Yeah.
But we can kind of jump around and talk about Richie. I guess we can go ahead.
Just to follow that thread.
To follow the thread.
Yeah.
I do think that it was, I do think that having Richie as a closeted homosexual and kind of carrying that with him, I think that was at least an attempt to balance the scales a little bit, like opening the movie with a hate crime, and a hate crime where a gay man is murdered. I feel like it may not have balanced it correctly, but I think that there was enough to satisfy my concerns, I guess, to have like Richie go through that arc and everything. How did you feel about that change to the character?
I mean, I think it added a level of depth to his character without question. That was it made his character even more interesting. I think of the adults, he was the character that I latched onto the most.
Nice.
He was just Bill Hader was just so great. But yeah, it added a level of depth to his character, made him more interesting, and it made his bickering and banter with Eddie, it gave a new level to that.
Yes.
And how he's always joking about how he fucked his mom and stuff like that, It's like he's closeted, and I think he thinks of his homosexuality as a dirty secret. And so I think that's a form of him repressing his, his sexuality by acting that way towards Eddie.
Right.
When in reality, he's kind of in love. He's basically in love with him, I think.
And see, that is where I guess I don't want to say take issue, but that's where that's where the movie kind of lost me a little bit. On paper, there's not a problem with it, really. What I wish would have happened was that, because at the end of the movie, he carves R plus E, into the railing thing. And obviously that's, it's implying that he was in love with Eddie, which is fine. And that's an interesting choice, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I think the movie would have worked a lot better if he was just repressing and has his closeted homosexuality to deal with. And then instead of writing R plus E, he writes R plus all the rest of the loser's initials in it. I think that would have been a much better way to kind of bring home the bond that they share.
Yeah.
And it just kind of felt like, because having that kind of unrequited love kind of story arc for Richie and Eddie, it's like when we get kind of in the big climax of the movie, when we get them kind of going off on their own, and the thing with the puppy, which I thought was kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
Like they're back and forth, and they're it kind of felt like it was meant to undercut the tension a little bit, like have some comic relief, but it just felt tonally off. Like it felt like it threw off the tone of the movie, and it didn't feel like it didn't feel as organic as I think that they were going for.
Okay.
Instead, to me, in a few scenes, it really felt like they were doing some like Abbott and Costello shtick in the midst of like this super intense like final battle of wills with Pennywise. But I was just like, it kind of threw me off. It kind of discombobulated me a little bit, but we'll talk more about the climax later. But yeah, I think that the actual, storyline, of Richie's homosexuality was a nice touch.
Okay.
And as I alluded to in the non-spoiler, I just wish that it was seeded in the first movie.
Yeah.
Cause there's nothing there in the first movie, and I just wish that there was more connectivity there.
He was also 11.
Yeah, that's true.
May not have known, you know.
But we did get the scene where he's at the arcade, which takes place after the fight.
Yeah.
So that same summer. So, like, that's where I kind of felt like it was just a little...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I also think it, as a symptom or another aspect of it that I appreciated was I think it gave a little bit more weight to Eddie's death.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was, which wasn't a surprise to me.
Right.
But I think it for people who hadn't read the book or people who weren't as connected to Eddie, I guess, as a character, I think it just gave a little bit more weight to his death. Yeah, I
can agree with you there.
Or at least another layer.
Right.
You know. So yeah, I appreciated that part. And I didn't feel like an agenda heavy thing, like, it's 2019, we gotta have a gay character. Like, it didn't feel that way.
I didn't get any of that, yeah.
Because it was so subtle.
Right.
And such an ancillary part of his character. You know, I think it was well done. But that way. So, yeah.
Yep. So let's kind of go back and talk about the reunion. Jade of the Orient, the Chinese food dinner.
Yeah.
When I re-listened to the book over the summer, that scene in the book, I was just like, I was so ready for it to happen in the movie. I was so pumped. And I wanted to talk about something else, but we'll circle back. But I was so I felt like it was there's been some kind of complaints about the CGI. I didn't think the CGI was bad.
Neither.
Really.
No.
And I think that scene delivered really well. Just it was really gross and intense, and I think the design of the creatures that come out of the fortune cookies was really good.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the scene just of them having dinner, shooting drinks and shooting the shit and catching up and everything was like, I was like, that was one of the moments I had that stupid grin on my face. I was like, these are the losers. These are my losers.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was so wrapped up in it, and like, I was like, the chemistry is there. Like, I've said before, I think on the podcast, that I was concerned going into, I think I said in the commentary, I was concerned going into Chapter 2 because they're adults now, and I think the charm of the first movie is that the kids had such a strong bond, and like, it was such a hurdle for them to, it was going to be such a hurdle for them to have new actors connect the same way that the kids did in the previous movie, and I think that they were freaking on fire.
Great chemistry right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In like little thing, like Bill Hader playing into the Richie Tozier trash mouth stuff.
Yeah.
Like him saying like, yeah, you know, I got married. Yeah. Yeah. Me and Eddie's mom are very happy together. Oh my God. And the Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
That was great.
That was really
great. That was great. Yeah, so did you have any thoughts on that sequence and the fortune cookies?
Just great. Yeah. It was very satisfying. Yeah, loved it. And I think, one thing that, and this is overall about the character throughout the whole movie, but Mike seems, this version of Mike seemed kind of, he was just kind of crazy.
Yeah, I didn't care for Mike in this movie, and I hate because he's such a strong character in the book.
Right. He's so important, but
yeah,
he was a little too off the wall. I think. I think it was a bit of a disservice to the character. Not the actor. I don't remember his name. Isaiah Mustafa.
Isaiah Mustafa. Yeah.
Isaiah Mustafa.
Old Spice guy.
Okay, yeah. He was good. He was fine. He did a good job. I just think it was what the direction they chose to take the character.
Yeah,
was a little weird, and it really started to show at that dinner.
Oh, you think so?
That's when it started. That's when it started. I mean, it's kind of some of the, it was early on in the movie
and everything.
Yeah,
and then back at the library with Bill, like we'll talk about that. But
yeah,
he felt like a crazed, obsessed person, which I can respect what they were going for because he's the one that stayed in the town. He's been adjacent to this evil presence that's been slumbering and still infecting the town for 27 years.
Yeah.
But it's, I feel like he was in the book, he was kind of he was keeping the lighthouse. Like, that's what his job was. And like, he was bringing them together. And in the book, in the dinner scene, we're veering into book spoilers. He knows about Stanley. And so he's sitting there and like, they're all having a great time and everything. And he's like, he has this secret, but I feel like that change in the movie didn't really work for me because, and granted, you can't really show you can't really show the inner monologue of Mike when he's doing that, but like, he's just a surprise. And I think that was an effective, like, scare with the fortune cookie, like fortunes. Like, I thought that was clever and cool, but I just feel like that just is a disservice to Mike as a character. Like, they just kind of made him a default crazy character who's kind of a dick. Yeah, kind of a dick. I didn't want to say nefarious, but like, he's conniving against the group. And it's like there's a moment at the climax, which we'll eventually get to, but like, where it's just like, okay, this is too much. Like, it's too far from, like, it's just too far away from like the Losers Club. Like, it just felt wrong.
They tried to do something and it didn't work. Again, like you said, I respect them for trying to do that, but it didn't work, and then they took it way too far at the end. So what did you think about it? Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, like, I think the Mike from the book and the Mike in the miniseries from the 90s was more of like a damaged war veteran kind of character, which I think was a better approach. And I think it worked. I think I prefer the Mike from the miniseries and from the book. Like, I think that worked better, and I liked that performance better. But they just tried something that didn't work, and it was unfortunate.
And after the dinner scene, like, there's they kind of break up. They're all like, all right, let's get the fuck out of here. And like, that's not really what happens in the book. Like, the book is pretty, like, they're in it, and like, that's fine. But it also at times felt, because there's like 2 times where they're like, all right, we're getting the fuck out of here, let's leave. And it just felt a little bit like a contrivance for me. And like, when they go back to the to the library and freaking Mike drugs Bill. Like, I had such a confused kind of reaction to that, because it's essentially the smoke hole scene from the book.
Right.
And I'm like, I love that they did that. Like, I love the visual of that, seeing it crash down or flying through the sky.
Yeah.
Like, the visuals there were astounding. But I'm also like, Mike Hanlon just drugged Bill. So that he can convince the rest of the losers to come back. And like, I'm just like, it didn't connect for me on a character level. I love James McAvoy's performance in that scene, though. I thought he was fantastic. So when they do kind of band back together, I guess, when they're back at the dairy house, the inn, there's something interesting that happens that I'm like 99% sure is not in the book. It's where Bev tells them that she's had visions of all their deaths, and that
that wasn't in the book, I don't think.
I don't think so either.
I think I'd remember that.
And I like it as a plot device, because the whole thing is that, like, it lays out that, okay, well, if the losers don't fight it, then within 20 years they're all going to die horrible deaths.
Right.
So like, there's like, it's like time is running out. Like, it's not, their lives are on the line there. And it's a plot mechanic for, like, it's a movie plot thing.
It wasn't necessary.
You don't think so?
I really don't. Because the entire plot is contingent on how close these people are. And that is the core of the story. That's what people love about this book and about this story. That's all you need to keep them together and keep them there.
And when you frame it like that, I agree. Okay. Like, I think they didn't need to have the group wanting to leave. They didn't need to, in having that, making the decision to have the group like break apart after the dinner is like, okay, they needed something to keep them together. But you're right. The heart of the story is the group, the togetherness. And it felt like the movie was missing that for a lot of the movie.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that after that scene, well, we get, Bill comes back and he explains to them the ritual of Chewed, which I thought was a nice, I'm glad that they incorporated that, although they changed it considerably, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But when they go back to the clubhouse and everything, so this is, okay, let's talk about the flashbacks. So they go to the clubhouse, that's when they decide, okay, we need to go off, we need to get our tokens, which we'll talk about that too.
Yeah.
But this is where it introduces the flashbacks. And I thought this was so clever of them, because the flashbacks in this movie, it's because they've decided that they need to each go to a specific, their own private, thing in town to have a token for the ritual, which talk about plot contrivance for movies.
Yeah.
But they need that, and they needed to remember parts of it. And they're like, well, we already remember everything. And they're like, no, because we weren't all together. Like, the idea of them having that gap that we as viewers of the movies also share, because we didn't see anything that they did independently after their fight. I just thought that was a really interesting way to pay tribute to the book's narrative structure.
Okay.
Yeah. How did you feel about that whole thing? Both the flashbacks and the token thing.
I love the flashbacks, because I feel like we fell in love with those kids in the first movie, and I didn't want them as an afterthought.
Yeah.
In this. And so it was a good way to incorporate them. I love the flashbacks. Also really touching, I cried several times.
Yeah.
During this movie, and so a lot of it was the flashback stuff and just how good of friends they are.
Yeah.
So it was incredibly satisfying in that regard. But I feel like all of them as adults having to go find their tokens, I was like, okay, I'm okay. All right, I can get on board with that. I think it's a little, like you said, it's a contrivance. It's a convenience.
Yeah. It really reminded me of Ready Player One.
Yeah.
We have 3 keys or 3 eggs we need to get.
Yeah.
And it felt like a video game side quest.
Yeah. It did. It totally did.
Because my memory of the book is that they all go their separate ways because they need to remember. Because their memories are still coming back, and they need to remember what they need to do and everything. So that's the impetus of them going their separate ways.
Okay.
Is for them to remember things. And it's a little flimsy in the book, because it's like Eddie says in the movie, why the fuck would you guys separate? As a risk assessment, you need to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that by making it them having to go on a scavenger hunt for things from their past, so that they can burn it like they're a jaded ex-girlfriend in the 90s, it felt like it just, again, cheapened that connection that the characters share with not only each other, but that connection that they share with Derry. Which we did get plenty of that in their individual things, but it was also I don't know, I feel like the idea of it was, maybe part of it was what is the I don't know. I don't know if there was ever really a time where the movie wanted us to think what's their token or whatever.
Yeah, right.
But it was also I don't care what the token is. But yeah, anyway, yeah.
Well, I actually had more of an issue with the flashbacks of them after they had their kind of fight in the first movie, and they kind of break apart into their own things, and they have their own little separate experiences with Pennywise again.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had more of a problem with that.
Really?
Because I thought it was because it was. I just didn't think it was all that necessary. I guess I don't know. It seemed like it was dragging it out even more.
Yeah.
I understand what you're going for now, with the whole finding the token things. I had my issue too. I thought it was a little goofy, but okay, let's at least just do that and get through it, and we can at least have some more time with these characters and develop them more as adults. So I'm on board with it. That's okay. But then it's I don't know. I loved seeing them as kids again, but it's just I it felt like they were sort of drawing the movie out at that point.
Yeah, and I agree. And it's kind of tricky because I liked most of those set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were visually like well executed and everything, but you're right. There is a redundancy to it. Like, we watched a whole movie of them being terrorized by the clown.
Right,
like,
right.
I mean, but then I don't know if there was really an organic way to have as much screen time for the kids.
I agree.
But I did really like Richie's and the Paul Bunyan statue because that's from the book, and I'm so glad that they did it because it's such a freaking nutso thing to do.
Totally. Yeah.
But it did get kind of. I've heard complaints that it kind of got redundant with them each one going to have a different encounter and everything. But I don't think that it didn't feel like it was redundant to me. Like, it felt like it was varied enough that, like, the Bev scene in the apartment was chilling and
Yeah, definitely.
like really creepy, and
It was all well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
But I can see it that being the point that kind of drags it out a little bit.
Yeah.
For
I didn't hate any of it or anything like that, but I just it did feel a little bit too like it felt a little unnecessary.
Yeah, and honestly, that first viewing, I was at a couple parts. I had kind of forgotten that it was all taking place like after the fight in the flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So like when Bill is like yelling at the sewer, I'm like, is this before? When is this? Is this before all of this stuff happens? Like after Georgie, but before everything else, or is this after everything? So I was a little confused there, but
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, let's backtrack just a little bit. Like, we don't need to talk that much about it because the movie's very brief about it, but the phone calls to the losers to bring them back.
Yeah.
First up, Bill. I really first of all, I appreciated that he was at the WB studios. I thought that was kind of just like, okay, easy to shoot that.
Right.
Did you recognize the director?
Was that I did. I recognize it, but I don't know who it is. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. And I want to double check to make sure.
It wasn't Wes Craven, was it?
No, Wes Craven died several years ago.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I hope it wasn't Wes Craven. Peter Bogdanovich.
Okay.
Yeah. So, he directed one of my personal favorite movies, The Last Picture Show.
Oh, okay.
Yep. But, I thought that was cool. So, and we're dipping. I'm gonna dip into the book changes and everything, but I'll save that for the next segment. But let's see. So let's talk about Bill and his. Hang on. No, let's talk about the phone call. So we'll go back to Bill. I thought that was a nice touch and everything. There's a moment after each one is called where it goes to Stanley as the last call, but you see, like, he calls Ben. And then the camera is like showing Ben from the outside, and then it pans up to the stars and it zooms in, and the stars transform into the puzzle pieces that Stanley's putting together. I thought that was just that flourish was beautiful.
Yeah, cool transition.
Yeah, and there's some really great kind of camera work and everything in the movie as well, and even in the climax, like with the bathroom stall and the grave. And the way it kind of messes with the kind of perspective and everything. Mm-hmm. But let's see. So Stanley kills himself. Cool. Expected. But Ben's another cameo. Ben's phone call. I don't know if you would have recognized him, but did you recognize who the guy was that the movie was trying to convince us was Ben at first?
No, I didn't notice who it was.
He was I didn't recognize this either. I looked it up, or I found out later. He was apparently the guy who played the kid Ben in the miniseries.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was kind of a cool touch.
Huh, okay.
Yeah, okay. Another kind of nitpick that I have with it is Bev's phone call. So Bev's phone call and her altercation with her husband it's intense. It's brutal.
Yeah.
Like it is.
It's brutal in the book too.
It really is.
Yeah.
My issue with the movie is that it's too all of it is too brief. Like I feel like this is the moment, like in the phone calls and everything, they were just like, okay, we need to hurry up and get everything into place because we've got a lot of movie left to tell.
Yeah.
And like I felt that it was rushed. So like when it comes to the point where like she's like talking to her husband and then he turns and he's fighting her and beating her and everything and she's fighting back. Like it all happens in the span of maybe a minute and a half, is what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
I did really like her just crushing his head with the phone, which I thought was a nice kind of mirror to what she did to her dad in the first movie.
Yeah.
Which I'll talk about Eddie's death later, but when Eddie dies at the end of the movie, I kind of had some qualms with how that was done. But anyway, what do you think of the setup of getting all the losers back?
It was all pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, they didn't drag it out too much. It didn't really sit with that very long or put much thought into it. But
Okay.
I thought it was all fine. I didn't think there was any reason to dwell on it or make it any more extensive. I mean, I don't disagree with you about what you said about Bev's altercation and assault from her husband.
Yeah.
But I just feel like that aspect of her character wasn't entirely necessary to have in the movie.
Sure.
It's a part in the book. It haunts her throughout for a while, and she's like on the run from him, and he's pursuing her.
Yeah,
and it's really compelling and really good in the book. But I just don't know. You have to make cuts somewhere when you adapt a book for a movie, and
I'm so glad they essentially cut him and Audra, Bill's wife. I'm so glad they cut that out.
Yeah, even in the book, I wasn't that thrilled with Audra.
Yeah, me neither.
I just didn't care.
Yeah, she's a damsel.
Yeah, she is
just a damsel.
Right.
And it wasn't effective.
Yeah.
But Eddie's Eddie and Richie's phone calls. So I liked, first of all, James Ranson is amazing.
Yeah.
I thought, that moment where he's talking to his wife and she's screaming at him about just nonsense stuff. That's exactly what I wanted out of like the depiction of Eddie and his wife in the movie.
Was it the same actress?
I think so.
I think it was too.
I think so, which I think is just brilliant.
Yeah, that was great.
But then the moment that, like, it's played for a laugh, but it's also like, man, that's messed up, is that when he hangs up the phone and then she immediately calls back to say, like, you didn't say love you.
Yeah.
But then he gets the call from Derry and then he's like, love you, mommy. It's just
Right.
like, it's so, like, it's played for a laugh, but man, it shows so much of just how just messed up that dynamic is.
There's some subtext there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I loved that. And then Richie bombing on stage as a stand-up comic, I thought was nice.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I'll save that for the book spoiler stuff.
Okay.
But, so they have their flashbacks, they get their tokens, they're ready to play. So then we get, and forgive me if I'm skipping stuff or if I'm missing things, but, Bill going to the carnival to save the kid, who he has a stake, that's a risk for him or whatever. He has that bond with the kid, which is kind of in his eyes, it's like a Georgie, substitute.
Right.
Which I thought was fine. Mm-hmm. But I kind of, it wasn't until we got the basement scene that it really kind of came together, where he's still grappling with his grief over Georgie because it's revealed that he was faking it and he just didn't want to play with Georgie, which I can't remember if that's in the book or not, but
I can't remember either.
Yeah. But I just thought that was a really interesting kind of character turn for him.
Yeah.
What did you think of the funhouse scene and the kid in Pennywise?
I think the fact that it happened that he went to the carnival to save the kid, it was interesting from a character standpoint.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a huge problem with it, but it felt like more of a digression and just kind of like I don't need this.
Yeah.
Really, the story doesn't need this necessarily. It was a good character development, but I don't think it was entirely necessary. Having said that, the scene in the fun house House of Mirrors was really cool.
Yeah.
I think my favorite, like, sadistic, twisted thing that Pennywise did throughout the whole movie was when he was licking the glass.
That was unsettling.
Like, it wasn't necessarily scary. It was just like, that's just fucked up.
Yeah.
And just, I love that, because that's how fucked up Pennywise is and crazy. So from that perspective, I loved it. And it was totally something that he was doing. He did that to evoke fear.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be a delicious meal I'm about to eat. Like, he was totally taunting Bill, and that's in his nature to do so. And I thought that was just a nice touch all around. So I really dug that scene. And I think one of the cooler parts about it was the fact that Bill was like crazy.
Yeah.
In the scene, and like the kid thought he was crazy and scary.
That was a nice touch.
That was important. And I think it sort of influenced him by the end of the movie, where he sort of lets go of his guilt. I thought that was, it did play in at the end there.
Yeah.
And I thought it was sort of, I don't want to use the word integral, but it was, it led into that. It followed that thread.
Yeah, and that's something that I talked about with Mike in my texting with him, is that he thought, because I was on board with that kind of characterization and that character arc for Bill, but he said, like, well, sure, but isn't that just basically his arc in the first movie, like getting over the death of his brother?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's true, but here we have a stand-in for Georgie that's like a personification of his grief, and it's revealed that he's been carrying the weight of him not really being sick, and could have been, like, that guilt kind of carries with him.
He never really got over it.
Yeah, which I was fine with. My issue with that, though, is that the kid at the carnival, / the skateboard kid, and the girl with the birthmark on her face.
Yeah.
Those two like subplots or sub characters, whatever you want to call them, felt okay. I'll split them up. So the kid in the funhouse felt like a kind of contrivance to get Bill to not go against the losers, but go off on his own, which isn't needed, because, as you said earlier, the heart of this story is the losers banding together, the losers being together, and the bond that they share. To have this kind of contrived instance where, like, okay, the leader of the losers is going to go try to protect this kid on his own, and then he's going to go kill Pennywise himself. It's like, I don't need that. I don't need, and I don't believe that of Bill. And so I just really had an issue with that. Also, I felt like the way that the death of the kid is done, gruesome, like insanely gruesome, and I was all for that. But there was a moment for a while after that where I was like, what, is that kid really dead? Like, or was that like an apparition, or like a thing of Pennywise just fucking with Bill? Like, it was a little bit convoluted to me, because like that character only exists as a fan of Richie Tozier, and a fan of skateboards and hearing voices in his drain. There's not much substance to it when the stakes of it are kind of confined to the losers and, I guess, the town as a whole, but I don't know. We'll get to that too. But I want to circle back and go to the girl under the bleachers.
Yeah.
That, and I mentioned this to Mike in our text messages, that felt like it was effective as a scare and as a set piece, but it really, really felt both inconsequential to anything else in the movie.
Yeah.
as well as, like, it felt so inconsequential that it came across, and I have no, like, this is just complete conjecture on my part, but it feels like they were making the movie, and then the studio's like, well, okay, well, we need another Pennywise killing something thing. Let's do the Georgie thing again. Just throw that in there. And it felt just like fan service, I guess, but
Really?
fan service for the first movie, I guess. It didn't have an effect on me aside from, oh wow, she just got killed.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you at all.
Okay.
But
Good, because then you'd be fired.
I really liked it because that little girl, she was in the opening scene with Adrian Mellon.
Yeah.
And he gave her the doll and stuff, and she still had the doll at the bleachers.
Yeah.
And the reason why I liked it is because I feel like in that moment, Adrian Mellon made her happy, and she was like a happy child, and Pennywise ain't having none of that.
Right.
Kids can't be happy in dairy. And so he was like, I got to take care of this right now. Which, that was all just something that may not have even been there that I picked up on, or something I just made up in my head, but that's how I got there, I guess. That's how I rationalized it.
And that's fair.
And I also loved it because Bill Skarsgård was just fucking amazing.
He was great.
When he's trying to lure the kid, it's just so goddamn good. Like,
and I would say, I wouldn't...
When he fake cries and shit, I was like, God damn, he is just diabolical.
And, like, I think it's hard to say this and mean it. But, like, I would say it's even more... I don't want to say it's more chilling or more disturbing than Georgie's death in the first movie. And I feel such a hesitance to say that, just because, I mean, Georgie's death is iconic, both in the book and that first movie is amazing for it. But I would say that it puts another layer to Pennywise's just disturbing nature, in the fact that he's literally preying on this girl's vulnerability and like the blemish on her face, he is connecting with her that way and killing her because, like, drawing her in with that. That makes it more disturbing. But again, it just felt inconsequential total. Like, I didn't even notice that she was in that first scene until the second viewing.
Oh, really?
Like, I'd forgotten about it in the first viewing.
Okay.
But I don't know. It really felt like a studio note to me.
Yeah, that's fair. And
yeah.
like I said, I actually think you're right. But another thing, my biggest issue with that scene is that he doesn't scare her. He just eats her.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because that's a part of the character of Pennywise, is that he sustains himself. He achieves sustenance through fear. Like, he feeds on fear, and he didn't even scare her. He just he ate her, and I was like, "That's okay. That doesn't make a lot of sense." It was cool. Yeah. Looked really cool. It was effective visually and all that, but but
I mean, dude's been asleep for 27 years. Yeah. He's got to get his grub on. But
see, but he really didn't get his grub on.
That's true.
Because he didn't even scare her. So. Ugh. He lured her in. And, Georgie was different because he bit his arm off. Yeah. And then he was alive.
That's true.
And then he drug him down into the sewers, and who knows how long he was alive and tortured by it to feed on his fear. But this little girl...
I didn't even consider that, really.
Right. He just bit her head off and she was dead.
That's true.
Yeah, so... What, semantics, but...
Right. So I want to talk about Henry Bowers and the final confrontation at the end, but before I do that... Stephen King's cameo.
Yeah. I didn't get a chance to read the thing you sent me.
Oh, good. Okay. So, okay. Stephen King has a cameo in the movie as the proprietor of the Secondhand Rose, antique shop or thrift shop or whatever it's called. Whatever you want to call it. So a couple things about that. First, I like that it's incorporated in the movie. What I don't like is that, again, it kind of feels like the movie was a little bit tonally off, or like the left hand wasn't talking to the right hand in some cases, because there's a whole big to-do about, he has Silver, and Silver's his bike, and like he even has that line at the end of the scene says, like, it's fast enough to beat the devil. but we don't like, and then like I mean I got chills when he's riding the bike and he says I owe Silver away.
Yeah.
Like that was great, but like that first viewing I was expecting it to pay off at the end too and be like the end of the book.
Right.
And I just felt like, and that's another kind of inconsistency I feel with the first movie is like we get like a shot of Silver in the first movie, but like there's not that importance laid to it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the second movie, like it's picking up the importance of it, but it's not established in the first movie. It's just established in the book. But anyway, then the whole running gag of Bill Denbrough not being able to end his books properly.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was cute at the beginning, and by the end of the movie, I was like, "Oh, okay, let's settle down, guys." And it also made me concerned because I was like, they're setting this up like we're not getting the ending from the book here.
Yeah.
Not that I knew that it was a fat chance we would get the book ending here, but I was just like, okay, they're setting it up and everything. But I wish that the Stephen King cameo would have been the only instance where someone's like, yeah, I don't like the endings of your books. I would have preferred it to be like that because it's obviously such a tongue-in-cheek thing about criticisms about Stephen King's endings.
Mm-hmm.
But what did you think of the Stephen King cameo?
I thought it was fun and satisfying, and yeah, I think it would have been so much better if that was the only reference to the endings.
Yeah.
If he made that line, the line that he made, that would have been even more satisfying.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it wasn't. It was good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot of opinions on it really. I mean, I just don't have a lot to say about it. But yeah, I was glad to see him in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple things, and I'll link to that article in the show notes. But couple things about it. One, Andy Muschietti had to convince him to do the cameo.
Okay.
Because like Stephen King told him like I'm bad luck. I'm cursed. But like the movies that I'm in that I have a cameo in fail.
Yeah.
So he's like, don't worry about it. So they brought him in, and man, okay. First of all, he's drinking a cup, which I was really hoping it would have been like a Nozola from Dark Tower.
Yeah.
But it's actually like something for like a soccer or football team that Andy Muschietti's a fan of, so it's not really King canon.
Mm-hmm.
But it breaks my heart to say it because I wanted it to be real. Like I wanted it to really happen. But the original idea for that cameo was to have adult Bill Denbrough, go into it, do it as it is and everything, with Stephen King and everything, but then have a scene where young Bill Denbrough goes in and it's Joe Hill as the young one, which that would have been so cool. Like, God, that would have been so great.
That would have been funny.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a bummer, but they had to, they didn't film it or anything. They couldn't incorporate it they couldn't justify it, I guess, for time's sake, I guess.
Yeah,
but
okay.
Man, it would have been so cool.
That would have been funny.
Yeah. But yeah, so cool cameo and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Henry Bowers. Do you want to? Yeah.
I feel like his role in the movie was toned down a little bit compared to the book.
Yeah.
I feel like not necessarily that he's one of my least favorite parts of the book, but I feel like we spend a little too much time with him in the book.
Yeah.
And so he was toned down a lot more in the movie. We weren't sitting with him so much, and I actually appreciated that.
Okay. How'd you feel about his performance?
He was a little over the top.
I thought so too.
But that actor looks so much like the kid.
He does.
That was great casting. I thought that was really good, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a little over the top, and thankfully there wasn't a ton of him. So
yeah.
So it didn't like drag down the movie, but
like it's another case of the tone of the movie not really matching up really for me.
Yeah.
Like he's playing like insane to the nth degree, and like it tracks because he's been in Juniper Hill, although they don't say Juniper Hill, but they have his outfit as it says JH PH, so Juniper Hill Psychiatric Hospital. But anyway, he is over the top and everything, but it's like I feel like that is warranted, but it's also it's incongruous to the tone of the movie because Pennywise is also kind of goofy in a way, but menacing, and like it's a clash there between those two tones. Like in the first movie, like Henry Bowers is like the mortal villain to the losers, and eventually he becomes like a deadly threat to them, but he's not crazy in the way that he is in part 2, and it just felt just too much.
Yeah, he was too much.
Yeah. The scene with Eddie in the bathroom and him was cool, but really brief. And I don't know. I think the way that Eddie is played after, like, he's been knifed in the face and takes a knife out and stabs a guy, like, it feels like a little Hollywoody.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess. I don't know. How'd you feel about that altercation?
I didn't really think about it that much.
Okay.
Frankly.
Sure.
Yeah. I think it was good development for his characters essentially building courage throughout the movie, and
Sure.
at the climax that comes into play. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my biggest gripes, aside from the climax, is the library scene. Like, Mike in general is just not, like, I don't even really think he has like a flashback scene at all. Really?
Wow, does he not?
No.
Dang.
Like, his token is just something from whatever.
It was The Rock.
Yeah.
That hit.
Yeah, the rock, and
Yeah.
like, it's like, okay, that's
We
kinda
saw that
weird.
already. Yeah.
Yeah. But his altercation with Henry in the library was one of my biggest disappointments, because it is so brutal in the book, and like it's so crazy, but like it's so brief and so just like streamlined.
Inconsequential.
Yeah, and inconsequential.
Did Mike even go down into the sewers in the end of the book?
No, because
He was like recovering.
Yeah,
wasn't
he was in the hospital.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And that was one of the great things about the book, is that, you know, you have this, like, the group is fractured
Yeah,
in that way.
right.
But how'd you feel about the library fight?
Again, it was very just inconsequential and just kind of perfunctory.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, I thought it was not really all that necessary.
Yeah.
Or it could have been done to better effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the final confrontation with it.
Mm-hmm.
They go to Nebolt. They go down back into the sewers and everything. They find his lair. They go down further. They have the whole. Oh, I wanted to point out this, but they have their own little like battle in the house. On the way down. I loved Stan in the refrigerator, because it felt like a very cool nod to the book and the miniseries, in a different context though. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
When he sprouted spider legs, I want to kind of question you. Like,
Okay.
did you associate that with something?
Oh, The Thing, right off the bat.
Okay.
Yeah, John
Okay.
Carpenter's The Thing. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Immediately.
Nice.
Yeah.
I figured you would. I didn't, because I haven't seen The Thing in a very long time.
Okay.
But
I didn't have a problem with it.
yeah. Oh no. I mean, I loved it.
Okay.
But I kept trying to make connections to the Dark Tower. Like, is this supposed to be a nod to Mordred?
Okay.
But that's a stretch.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they get to its lair and they do the ritual of Chud, again, like, it just felt just a disservice to Mike, because it's like, oh, I lied. It was supposed to be a sacrifice. Everyone's supposed to die.
Right.
But I thought that we would be safe because we're together. And like, that just felt just so random to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have their fight and everything. What did you think of Pennywise's true form, quote unquote?
Well, I was fine with it because we never got to see his true form because the ritual didn't work.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I was glad, because I feel like almost any time you have, at the end of the day, Pennywise, it is a monster.
Yeah.
It's a monster. And monsters rarely work.
Yeah.
Usually there's something that's cartoonish, or like, oh, that's kind of crazy but not really scary,
Sure.
or like it's over the top, or it's like so bad it's laughable. Even with
Yeah.
modern CGI, I mean, name a really good monster ever. I mean, Frankenstein. I'm looking at your classic monster,
Oh,
your
yeah.
Universal's classic monsters. Like, yeah, some of those are good, but like those are staples. You know what I'm saying? Like, naming like a non-staple monster that was really good. There's not many.
Yeah.
Alien.
Alien, yeah.
It's a great monster.
The perfect organism.
Yeah. I mean, there's a handful.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're trying to make an original, like, okay, what can we do? Let's give it 10 legs instead of 6, or like, you know, like, let's make it have scales. Like, what? I don't know. Like, you have to be a ridiculously creative person to come up with an original monster. And I think anything they could have just put on screen just wouldn't have worked. Like the miniseries.
Yeah, that was
bad.
laughably bad.
It was bad. And I think they would have done better than that. But I don't think it would have been memorable. And there's just something about Pennywise that's so iconic and
That's fair.
and memorable that I think it's
And they did make him a spidery thing.
right,
you know,
right.
which, I don't know, that, like, it looked fine and threatening and scary and everything, but also, like, the more I reflect on it, I think of, this is maybe not a deep cut, but I think of the Treehouse of Horror, one of the Treehouse of Horrors from The Simpsons, where it's the riff on Nightmare on Elm Street, where Groundskeeper Willie is in their dreams, and there's one segment where he is like he's like a spidery, like, bagpipe kind of
I
thing,
think I know what you're talking about.
but
yeah.
it's still his head.
Yeah.
And, like, I just got flashes of that when I saw Pennywise.
Gotcha.
So, the pep, I want to highlight the pep talk that Richie gives to Eddie. I thought was great.
Yeah.
Like, who killed a demonic clown before he was 14? Who stabbed, Henry Bowers with a knife that he pulled from his own face?
Yeah.
Who married a woman that's 10 times his body mass? It's like, God damn it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, okay, I have a nitpick that is again, it's a nitpick, it's whatever. Beep Beep Richie.
Mm-hmm.
So there are technically 3 instances where it's used in this movie. It's in the voiceover as Richie is on stage, bombing on stage at the beginning. Someone says, like, he's having memories. It's like a cacophony of memories of voices from Derry, and someone says, beep, beep, Richie. 2 is at the Derry house, the inn, where Bev says beep beep Richie after Richie says something obnoxious.
Yeah.
And the 3rd one is at the climax where he yells at Pennywise, beep beep motherfucker, and then I think that's when he gets caught in the deadlights.
Yes.
My issue with that is that the book has beep beep Richie as a running thing that the kids say to Richie and that the losers say to Richie to get him to tone it down because he's a trash mouth.
Yeah.
The first movie doesn't establish that at all. Like,
No.
there's one instance in the first movie, and it's kind of a little nod to book fans. It's when Pennywise jumps out of the coffin, and he's like, beep, beep, Richie, and it's like, that's the only context we have for that. And it bothered me that it's used in the second part.
Yeah.
As if it was established that way in the first.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't established, and that's kind of I just didn't have a lot of thoughts about it, really.
Okay.
I didn't really. Yeah. I don't disagree with you.
Sure.
But yeah.
How'd you feel about Eddie's death?
I thought it was good. I saw it coming because it's in the book, and
Yeah.
I figured that was going to stay in. I would have been disappointed if none of them would have died.
Yeah.
With the exception of Stanley.
Right.
I thought it was good. I mean, I thought it was heavy. Like, it actually it resonated.
Yeah.
And, like, I thought it was emotional and
Yeah, I think it was handled well, and I agree. Like, in the setup of, like, the slow build to that, like having him being kind of scared, and kind of gaining that confidence, and, like, I love the moment when Bev gives him the I don't know what it's called.
like a fire poker.
Yeah, I think it's part of a fence. But
Oh, is it?
It's
Like
it looks like a fire poker. And she's like, "This kills monsters if you believe it." Like, that is a beautiful scene. Like, I thought that was such a nice touch. My issue, and it's a nitpick, and I'm not going to have a problem with it when I revisit it and everything, but in the book, his arm is bitten off. And I like the symmetry of his arm being bitten off and him bleeding out, literally bleeding to death from that wound. Because there's a symmetry between adult and young Eddie, because Eddie's arm gets broken. In the movie, it's too Hollywood. It's too movie death. It's like he's stabbed from behind with the like pincer or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just, it comes through the front. It's like, I've seen that in a million movies. Like,
Right.
it just felt too Hollywoodized.
That's fair.
Yeah. So how did you feel about the way that they defeated Pennywise?
I honestly have trouble remembering how they defeat him in the book.
And that's interesting because I kind of do too. And I think that that's due to, the fact that, that Stephen King was coked out of his gourd.
Yeah, right.
Because
the ending is a mindfuck in the book.
it's such a mindfuck. It's so metaphysical. It's so just abstract.
Yeah.
And I think that they defeated it just by kind of almost a psychic link of sorts.
Right. I thought in the book they kind of snuffed out the deadlights.
Maybe. Because I know they also had silver that they kind of imbued with power, and they had like the inhaler became like a weapon and everything because they believed that it would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the idea of like, we didn't talk about Eddie's flashback, but I did want to touch on real quick that music drop of "Just Call Me Angel in the Morning."
Yeah.
Felt so out of place to me.
It was weird. I don't get it.
Of like 2-3 seconds. It's like they wanted to have a full on thing, but it's like we don't want to pay for the rights of it, so we're only going to pay for a little bit. But it's so out of place.
I didn't get that. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, him saying like it felt small, it felt weak, and everything. And it's like, and then like I think Mike was like, well, it's the thing of some scientific law or whatever. It's just like it encompasses what the Native American says. Like it fills out the the volume of the container it's in or whatever. So like they have to lure it into a smaller place. But anyway, they basically yell at it until it becomes a small thing, and then they take the heart and rip it out.
It kind of worked, but it was a little cheesy.
It was a little hokey.
Hokey,
Yeah, and I just felt like it kind of. I didn't have as much of a problem with it the second time. The first time around, I had a kind of a bigger issue with it because it just felt unimaginative compared to the book, and I was comparing it to the book, so that was a fault of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else on the climax?
No, I guess not.
Okay.
I think it looked good. There was like the layer, the set was good.
Mm-hmm.
That was well done, I think.
The deadlights were amazing.
Great, yeah. Especially the part where he locks Richie.
Yes.
That was like, I was like, ooh.
That was amazing. And you see it like, you see the deadlights like going through the back of its head.
He's like channeling them,
yes,
sort of. Yeah,
so cool.
That was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Really felt a little that just the house was destroyed, not the whole town.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. You know, I guess the ending in the book is a little darker than I remembered.
Yeah.
Like the town is gone, and in the book, don't they all start to forget?
Yes, and that was honestly, I think that's my biggest issue with the entire movie.
Okay.
Because they start forgetting again. And the movie retcons that, or it changes that into where it's like, well, we can remember now because we killed it and we defeated it and everything. And it's like, there's this whole thing like where Ben says that he still wants to remember the good and everything. He wants to hang on to the good memories. And like, I like that sentiment, but it felt too happy. It felt too positive. Like the movie, the story of it is at its heart. It's about these grown-ups that are confronting this shared trauma that they had as kids that is no longer in their memory. And it's about reconnecting with what made them work so well together as kids and defeat this demonic thing. And in the process kind of shed that guilt or that kind of trauma of their past. And like, I get what the movie's going for, that like, okay, they've shed the trauma, they've defeated the evil thing, they can go on with their lives and be happy, and they can remember it and everything. And it just felt like it's such a beautifully poignant thing about the book, is that they forget it. Like, they start to forget everything, and it's just like, that's life. You forget like what it's like to be a kid and everything, and it just felt like that was a disservice to the story to me.
Okay. I actually, I was expecting the town to implode.
Yeah.
I thought that would be, that the true denouement would be more true to the book.
Yeah.
That's what I was expecting, but I for whatever reason, in the moment, I actually welcomed that happier ending.
Okay.
I don't know why. Because I really wanted that. I wanted that darker, more realistic ending, and I think it would have tied in a little better with the sentiments that Big Bill was talking about in the beginning of the movie, where he's talking about, closure. Most people don't get closure in their lives and stuff like that, and endings are overrated, kind of type thing. He was sticking to in the beginning of the movie. I think it would have tied in better with those ideas to go with the book's ending. But I don't know. I think I just love those characters, and to see them happy at the end was kind of nice.
Sure. And I won't dispute that. Like, I totally get that. I don't know. I just feel like,
ultimately, I do wish they would have done what the ending that was in the book.
Yeah.
Though, where they start to forget. And,
yeah.
But I think you could do both. I think you can have them achieve happiness and still start to forget, and have Derry be just some dark stain that everybody forgets about in the middle of Maine somewhere.
Yeah.
And Big Bill still takes his ride on Silver at the end, and Ben and Beverly still take right off into the sunset together. I think you can still have that happiness with the closure of the trauma, if you will, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
And maybe I would feel more at peace with that if they had ended the movie with Bill's bike ride.
Yeah.
Like, if they had moved that scene from earlier in the movie to the end of the movie, because that in the book signifies so much to me, like him embracing what he remembers as a kid while shedding away the trauma that terrorized him and his friends.
Yeah.
And it just feels like such a poignant moment, like it's such an emotional thing, but them remembering everything, and it's like, oh, we had a fucked up vacation, one of our friends died, and two of our friends died.
Yeah.
But we remembered everything, here's the pictures. It just feels like it didn't agree with me.
Okay.
The other big thing that I was not too keen on was the suicide note, or non-suicide note. Yeah.
Okay.
The whole idea that Stanley took his own life in order to make sure that the losers were successful, like as a calculated move, felt just, it didn't feel right to me. Specifically because the book, like, that's like Stanley killing himself in the book. Granted, we don't know everything that happened. We don't have the benefit of, an entire movie of them as kids, and then Stanley killing himself in the book, because Stanley kills himself in chapter 3. But that establishes just like the weight of it, like the importance of it, and the terror of it, and the stakes that are at play.
Yeah.
But like having it be like, oh, well, I did this so that you guys can win and everything, and it just feels like I didn't need that. I feel like it was too happy. Like, it was tragically happy.
It was kind of sweet, but not in keeping with the themes of the book, and it was out of place. I agree.
Yep. Yeah. So overall, what did you think of It Chapter 2?
I really liked it. Like I said, I don't know. Man, I think as a collective 2-film, roughly 5-ish hours.
Yeah, more like 5.5, I think.
5.5 hours of film. I think this is pretty much as good as it's going to get for adapting Stephen King's book.
And
obviously there's choices you can make that are different, and like But I think I don't know. I think this is as good as it's going to get. Like I don't really want in 20 years somebody to try to remake this, or I don't know. Like I'm satisfied with what I got. I really am.
And that's great.
Yeah.
I'm all for like another 27 years passing and them remaking it.
Okay.
Because I think that it's prime for like a streaming service limited series.
Limited series, yeah.
And that's our review of the movie. I'll say that because I want to touch on a couple of things from the book, and then I can let you leave. So book spoilers more so than what's been book spoilers on. I'm going to play a little bit of music here. We're going to spoil the book It. Okay, spoilers on for It, the book. My biggest thing was that they did not go for it with Matcher and the Turtle.
Yeah, right.
And the macroverse and the metaphysical thing, the battle of wills and the mind. And, like, I feel like they could even do, like, kind of a Doctor Strange type of thing. There's ways that they can visualize that. And my biggest gripe is that, like in the book, if you're listening to spoilers, or if you haven't read the book, the actual ritual of Chute is that they band together, and I think it's just Bill goes into the macroverse and he sees Matcher and the Turtle, which is like the representation of good, kind of an immortal like being. In the Dark Tower, he's one of the guardians of the beams. And like Matcher and the Turtle tells him like, oh, hey, you know, I'm good and everything. Like he kind of like tells him like how to defeat it and everything. They defeat it I think they defeat it in the macroverse like that. Bill like they use this kind of like power that they have, the bond that they have together to defeat it at a molecular level like that. Mm-hmm. And like, it's a very metaphysical, like I said, King was coked out of his mind.
Yeah.
If you read that section of the book, it's really hard to grasp, like, visually what's going on.
Right.
But I think that they could have still done that. And my biggest gripe with the movie, and the movies even, in retrospect, is that they had references to the turtle. Like, the first movie had, like, they're in the quarry, and there's a reference to the turtle. And then, Bill has, in Georgie's room, like, Lego turtle and everything. And then in the classroom, in It Chapter 2, there's a giant freaking, like, statue of a turtle and everything. It's like, and I saw that, I was like, they're gonna go for it. They're gonna do it. And they didn't.
No, they didn't.
And it was such a bummer to me.
Really?
Yeah, cause I wanted the movie to embrace the weird.
Yeah.
I really wanted it to just freaking go for it. And it didn't. And I really thought that in the denouement, I thought that when they were, as adults, when they were cleaning themselves off in the quarry, I really, really thought when Richie was like, I lost my glasses, I was so certain that Bill was gonna like go underwater and like he was gonna like be brought into the macroverse and like see Matron and like they were gonna have like a palaver.
I thought there'd be more there too.
Yeah. But it didn't. And, like that would have satisfied me. That would have been fine. But it's another situation where it's something that didn't. It felt like it was being set up, but just didn't pay off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would have been hard to achieve, though.
It really would have.
I think you could do it. I think you could absolutely do it. The right person. Carrie Fukunaga?
Yeah.
Probably could have pulled it off. That's why I was so thrilled when he was originally attached to the project, because I was like, he can make that work at the end. So yeah, I think, but again, it is, I think that'd be tough. And I can't necessarily see a way to pull it off, but I'm not a filmmaker, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I would love to see it though. Yeah. Somebody try to do that.
That's why I think it would be doable in like a limited series on Netflix or something.
Yeah.
They could
I'd definitely like to see it in a series.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, that's really the only book thing that I have. I'm sure that there's other things, but.
Sure.
My wax warmer thing is making my eyes really dry. If that's a thing. I don't know. My sinuses are weird about it.
Gotcha.
So anyway, I think that'll do it for Tower Junkies this week. This time that we're here. Surprise! There's going to be an Obsessive Viewer It Chapter 2 review. I just hiccuped into the mic. Oh, it's still going. Okay. I'm going to take that again. Surprise! There is going to be an It Chapter 2 review on Obsessive Viewer with me and Fecus. Tiny, unfortunately, has to work tomorrow when we record. But look forward to that. I might try to release these episodes at the exact same time. I think it'll be a fun conversation with Fecus because he has not read it. So I think it'll be more of a review of the movie than my annoying nitpicks about differences from the book. So look forward to that, obsessiveviewer.com. And also coming up on Tower Junkies, we're going to do, I think, a news roundup. Eventually, we're going to do the Institute. We have a lot of stuff in the pipeline, so so check us out. Also check out Patreon, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And minimum donation of $1 per month gets you access to an RSS feed that has just exclusive content recorded for you. Also, if you donate $5 or above to Patreon, you get access to video reviews of movies that I see in the theater every now and then. So having said all that, I think that'll do it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Long days, pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
Yeah. And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy.
Are you going back to see the doctor at any time?
No, they said that what they're going to do is they're going to put in the order for they're going to send the data to a sleep doctor.
Yeah.
Doctor sleep, if you will. And then when he or she gets that data at the Institute, they will go ahead and just kind of, It'll cause like a kind of fire starter for them to order the CPAP information, and then hopefully when I get it and everything, they'll notify me and let me know if there's a copay and everything. So I'm not gonna be billed $1 billion or anything, but hopefully I'll be the shining example of a person with sleep apnea and everything.
I hate you.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Yeah.
Anyways, I was just curious.
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to TowerJunkiesPod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at Facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter at TowerJunkiesPod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at TowerJunkiesPod.com/donate, or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at Patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at teepublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberInIrvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and OV Anthology Pod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
Kitty!